Hi, I'm Ashley. And at my sister's baby shower, they gave me a folding chair, right next to the trash. No joke, no apology, just the corner they always meant for me to sit in. But that chair, that was just the beginning. They said I wasn't forgotten, that things just slipped through the cracks. But cracks don't erase names from photo albums. Cracks don't replace your handmade gift with someone else's name. What if I told you the house we celebrated in was supposed to be mine? That the invitations, the designs, the backdrop, they were all mine too? And what if I told you I stayed quiet until I didn't? Want to know what happens when silence ends and truth walks in the room? Let me show you. The email came through at 6:17 p.m. on a Wednesday. Not from my mother, not from my sister, just a forward from a family friend. The subject line read, "Callista's baby shower, details." My name, typed in lowercase, no last name, no warmth. Just a line between party favors and extra parking available at the church next door. I stared at it longer than I should have. There was no direct invitation, no RSVP request, no personalized message like others had received. Just instructions, just obligation. That's when it hit me. I wasn't invited. I was tolerated. The day of the shower, Plano's air hung thick, sunlight pressing down on the suburb like a warm, unwelcome hand. The backyard shimmered with pastel balloons and curated flower walls. Every guest I passed looked like they'd stepped out of a Pinterest board. Powder blue dresses, soft pink lipstick, smiles tight but intentional. And there I was. Navy slacks, white button-up, flats from 3 seasons ago. Not because I didn't own something nicer, but because I knew, deep down, I wasn't here to be seen. I was here to witness. When I approached the assistant at the gate, I noticed she hesitated. Her eyes scanned a clipboard. "Ashley? Harper?" she asked, unsure. "That's me," I replied, voice steady. She nodded quickly, then motioned to the far end of the yard. "You're in overflow seating. We're out of decorated chairs, but we've got something set up for you." Overflow. She handed me a folding chair. Metal, no cushion, no ribbon. Just me and a squeak with every step I took, dragging it across the concrete. I followed her gesture and found the spot, tucked between a compost bin and the driveway's trash area. No umbrella for shade, no table nearby. Just a single chair with a torn note scotch-taped to the back, reserved for Ashley. It was handwritten, smudged, almost like an afterthought someone remembered 10 minutes before guests arrived. I sat down. Across the yard, I could hear laughter ripple around Callista, my older sister, who glowed in a pale pink maternity dress, hand placed theatrically on her belly every time someone turned a camera her way. My mother, Verlaine, hovered close, adjusting Callista's hair, gesturing toward the dessert table. They moved like synchronized swimmers, elegant, rehearsed, practiced. Nobody looked toward me. The paper cup of lukewarm water I held felt heavier than it should have. I took a sip, more for the excuse than thirst. Behind me, 2 guests chatted while fixing their makeup. "Is she family?" one asked, low but audible. "I think that's her sister," the other replied. "The one who moved away a while back?" Moved away. Like a misplaced piece of furniture. I checked my phone. No new messages. No "come find me" from anyone. Just the email from 3 days ago. I opened it again. My name was still wrong. That's when I noticed it. Everyone else had actual invitations. Cream-colored envelopes with gold-embossed lettering, some even tied with blush ribbon. I'd seen them posted on Instagram with captions like, "So honored to be part of Callista's journey." I didn't even get a digital RSVP. Maybe it's not intentional, I murmured to myself, but it sounded thin even to my own ears. And then, like a reflex, a memory slipped in. Me at 10 years old, picnic at Lake Ray Hubbard. Everyone had chairs, even the cousins from New Jersey. I got the camping stool, the one without a back, placed closest to the smoke from the barbecue grill. Funny how some traditions stick. A woman in a pale lavender dress passed me without a glance. Another adjusted her sun hat, nearly knocking over my cup as she reached for her phone. No apologies, just polite avoidance. A staff member eventually came by with napkins for the guests. I held out my hand, and he placed a plain white square in it. Everyone else had monogrammed ones, Callista's initials printed in rose gold. Of course they did. I looked back at the folding chair, at the compost bin beside me, at the small sagging sign with my name barely hanging on. They knew exactly where they put me, I whispered, voice flat. A few hours. That's all I needed to endure. I thought I could handle that. But as I glanced toward the house, toward the living room window I once looked through as a child, I knew something had shifted. This wasn't just a seat in the corner. This was the corner they always meant for me to sit in. As the chatter outside blended into the warm hum of cicadas, I stood up from the folding chair and made my way toward the house. The breeze had shifted, or maybe it was just my body catching the chill of something unspoken. Either way, I needed a break, from the smiles, from the photo ops, from being wallpaper. Inside, the cool air hit me like a memory. The same faint scent of lemon cleaner, mixed with vanilla from the bakery boxes in the kitchen. The same hardwood floor that creaked in the same spots. But it wasn't mine anymore. Not the space, not the feeling. The hallway was lined with photos, some framed in gold, others in whitewashed wood. Dozens of moments frozen in time. Callista at her bridal shower. Callista in Paris. Callista announcing her pregnancy, holding a onesie with baby B in glitter script. My eyes scanned frame after frame, searching for even one glimpse of myself. I wasn't there. Not in the Christmas morning group shot, not in the mom's 60th birthday collage, not even in the family beach trip where I distinctly remembered being the one behind the camera, passing out sunscreen like a lifeguard no one tipped. Where my high school portrait used to hang, just above the stairwell, now there was a blown-up maternity shoot of Callista, hand on belly, wind in her hair, shot like a magazine cover. The lighting was perfect. Her makeup looked effortless. The frame was triple the size of anything else on the wall. This used to be home, I muttered, barely above a breath. Now it's just a set piece for someone else's life. I kept walking, deeper into the dining room where the VIP family dinner setup glowed under string lights. The table was flawless. White roses, silver flatware, name cards folded into tiny tents. I moved closer, pretending to admire the place settings, but really, I was counting. Every chair was monogrammed. Elegant script. One by one, I read them. Mom, Dad, Uncle Raymond, Aunt Bev, Callista's college roommate. And then I saw it. At the very end of the table, separate from the rest, sat a metal folding chair. No cushion, no card. It faced the corner, not the center, not the conversation. Even the furniture knew where I stood. I didn't sit. I just stood there, feeling the symbolism settle around me like fog. It wasn't just a mistake, it was a message, clear as day. You're technically part of the family, but let's not pretend you're actually part of the moment. Behind me, I heard a familiar voice. Ashley? I turned. It was Mrs. Ellison, a family friend from our old church. She smiled like she'd just remembered something from a long-forgotten grocery list. I didn't know you were still in town, she said, tilting her head. I'm in Austin, I replied. Oh, I thought you'd moved further. She blinked. Still doing, what was it? Graphic arts. Brand design. Right. She nodded, distracted, already glancing toward the buffet table. Well, it's so good to see you. She didn't ask anything else. She didn't really want to know. A few minutes later, another woman leaned in and said, So, you're Callista's sister, right? Yes. Huh. I didn't realize she had one. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. Neither did she. That answer didn't land, not really. She laughed politely and wandered off. And just when I thought the hits were done for the afternoon, my Aunt Janice made her entrance. Tulle scarf, oversized brooch, and the perfume cloud of a woman who still thought Chanel No. 5 was exclusive. She kissed Callista on both cheeks, complimented her earrings, and then turned to me. "Still single, Ash?" she asked, loud enough for a few heads to turn. I nodded once. "Well, that's all right, honey. Some people just aren't meant for the spotlight." I almost responded. I almost reminded her that I've never once sought the spotlight, but that I sure as hell knew how to light a room when asked. But I didn't. Instead, I gave her what she expected. A nod and a smile that meant nothing. They expect silence. So I gave them stillness, the kind that makes people uneasy, the kind that holds its breath right before the truth walks in. I slipped away when no one was looking, climbing the stairs I used to run up barefoot as a teenager. I counted them again. 13. Same number as always. At the end of the hall, I opened the door to what used to be my bedroom. Gone were the posters, the bookshelf, the string of lights I once begged Dad to help me hang. Instead, it had become a holding cell for gift bags, promotional boxes, and cardboard labeled Callista's Media Kit. Stacked high, like someone had been building a brand, not a baby. The walls, once bright teal, were now beige. The corkboard with my college acceptance letters, replaced with shelving for monogrammed bibs and influencer partnerships. It wasn't just repurposed, it was erased. On my way back downstairs, I passed the front hallway mirror. I paused, not to check my reflection, but because something was taped in the corner. A sign. "Welcome to baby Callista's big day." Her name, in gold calligraphy. Flourished, framed. Nothing else. Not even a mention of family, not even a trace of mine. I stood there a long second, then whispered, "I left this house once. They never expected me to walk back in." I turned from the mirror and headed back toward the crowd. Somewhere between the beige hallway and the white noise of cocktail chatter, I felt myself slip into something invisible, like a coat I didn't remember putting on. I stood just beyond the threshold of the living room, watching as someone dimmed the lights and queued up the projector. The screen flickered to life, casting shadows across the walls that once held pictures of all of us, but now only reflected one story. The music began, soft and nostalgic. Acoustic guitar, light strings. Someone whispered, "Oh, I love this song," as the first slide came up. Callista Through the Years. There she was, 2 years old, covered in cake frosting, laughing with her mouth wide open. Then at age 5 in a ballet tutu, then blowing out candles shaped like the number 10. Each photo was a curated gem. Beaches, birthdays, proms, college graduation, all set to lyrics about time flying and family roots. I waited for my cue. Not to be featured, of course. I knew better. But maybe just a blurry background figure, a shoulder, a strand of hair, a sliver of proof that I'd been there too. Slide after slide passed. No shoulder, no hair, no ghost image. I wasn't just absent, I had been removed. "I took that one," I whispered under my breath, watching Callista in her cap and gown. I was holding the camera. Another photo, another moment. Her engagement party. I'd helped set up the string lights that night, tied those white ribbons by hand. They were there. I wasn't. Across the room, people laughed, wiped tears. Someone said, "She's always been such a star." Another added, "Verlaine did such a beautiful job raising her." I scanned the crowd. No one noticed I hadn't said a word. No one noticed I hadn't been included. It wasn't just forgetting, it was rewriting. I blinked, but the sting in my chest didn't soften. I thought about my high school graduation, how I'd taken dozens of photos of Callista, handed off the camera once so someone could get one of me. That one picture came out blurry, off-center, out of focus. Maybe that's when I started becoming background noise, I thought, when even the lens couldn't quite hold me. The slideshow ended with a shot of Callista holding a tiny onesie that said, "Baby B," in glitter. The room clapped. A few people stood to give her a small ovation. My mother wiped a tear from her cheek and rose to her feet. "Thank you," Verlaine said, voice steady. "Thank you to everyone who's been part of Callista's journey. You've loved her, supported her, celebrated her." Her eyes swept the room. They brushed over me like I was furniture. She didn't mention my name. Not once. I didn't flinch. Didn't cry. Instead, I leaned back in my folding chair, crossing one leg over the other, tapping my fingers slowly against the metal armrest. There's a special kind of pain, I thought, in realizing you've been written out of your own history, and a special kind of strength in deciding you won't beg for an edit. I felt that strength now, not because I'd grown it, but because they'd carved it into me. The lights came back up. Guests shifted, blinking. Someone announced that cake would be served shortly. Others started rising from their seats, already drifting toward Callista, arms open for hugs and praise. Verlaine moved toward the front for a group photo. Someone handed her a bouquet of flowers. She took them gracefully. Like the queen of a kingdom I no longer had a passport to. I stood up, slipped out the side door before anyone could stop me. Not that anyone would. Outside, the sun had started to dip lower, casting gold across the back lawn. I walked past the balloon arch, past the drink table, past the photo backdrop where my sister had posed for what felt like hours. I pulled out my phone, opened the family's shared photo album, typed in my name. No results. Just like that, the technology confirmed what the day had already told me. I wasn't there. I had been erased. I stayed outside longer than I intended. The air had cooled a bit, the sun dipping lower behind the tall hedges. The buzz of conversation and clinking glasses still floated from the patio. But I needed the distance, just enough space to breathe without everyone else's narrative fogging up my lungs. Someone called out that the next activity was starting. A few people herded toward the lawn near the rose trellis, where a whiteboard stood propped on an easel. Gold letters spelled out, "Name the baby." Because of course there had to be a game. I stayed back at first, leaning near a potted fern like I was checking my phone. I wasn't. I was holding onto a small folded note in my hand. I'd written a name earlier that morning. Just one word. Elliot. It was my dad's middle name. A quiet man with quiet values, the kind of person who wouldn't have needed to be honored to be worthy of it. Maybe I thought writing it down would make me feel like I still had some thread tied to the tapestry of this family, even if they'd tried to snip me out of it. People laughed as they took turns writing names, some cute, some ridiculous. Ryder, Paisley, Banjo, yes, seriously. Verlaine clapped her hands together after one particularly elaborate suggestion and said, "You all are so creative." Eventually, there was a lull. I stepped forward. Just one step. I walked up slowly, uncapping the dry erase marker. The board had room in the bottom right corner, as if waiting for something a little more grounded. I wrote it clearly, carefully. Elliot! I didn't expect fanfare. But I didn't expect what happened next either. Callista, walking over with a mocktail in hand, glanced at the board. Her lips curled, not quite a smile. "Let's keep it to immediate family, yeah?" Then, with the same casual ease someone uses to wipe away a smudge on glass, she lifted the marker and erased it. Just like that. 1 second, it was there. The next, it wasn't. A few chuckles broke the silence. Someone whispered, "She's just the aunt, right?" Another said, "I thought that was the planner's friend." Verlaine didn't blink, didn't correct them. Just sipped her drink and watched me like I was weather. Predictable, distant, and inconvenient. I nodded, stepping back. "Right," I said, more to myself than anyone else. Later, while people milled around the dessert table, the next station opened up. Write a late-night diaper note. Something sweet or silly for those 3 a.m. changings. Sharpies were passed around. People giggled, bent over stacks of diapers, writing lines like, "You got this," or "Sleep is for the weak." I waited until the end. Picked up a fresh diaper and wrote, "You'll make mistakes. That's okay. Just don't forget who helped raise you." I set it on the pile with the rest. Maybe 5 minutes passed. I walked by the trash bin on the side of the house, heading toward the bathroom, and I saw it, my diaper note, crumpled, smudged with chocolate frosting, tossed without fanfare. Callista stood nearby, laughing with a guest. Some of the messages weren't on theme, she said, sipping from her glass. That was the moment I stopped pretending this was about forgetfulness. It wasn't oversight, it was choreography. I didn't confront her, I didn't make a scene. I stepped forward, lifted the diaper out of the trash, gently flattened the creases, and folded it in half. I slid it into my purse like I was tucking away a receipt, something that proved a transaction had taken place, even if no one else wanted to admit it. They weren't trying to forget me. They wanted to make sure I remembered my place. No longer part of the story, no longer welcome on the page. I turned toward the gift table, suddenly aware that something else was missing. The box I had wrapped the night before, silver paper, dark green ribbon, a note that simply said, "From Ashley," wasn't among the others. I scanned the table, then the floor. Nothing. As I turned to check around the side, a staff member walked past, holding a familiar-looking box. He was heading toward the back of the house, not the display table. "Excuse me," I called out. He paused, startled. "That's mine." His eyes flicked down to the tag, then back up to me. I was told to move it." "To the trash?" "No, ma'am. Just somewhere else." I took a step closer. "Put it where it belongs." He nodded, changed direction, and walked it back to the table without another word. My chest didn't rise in rage. My hands didn't shake, because by then I already knew. This wasn't ignorance. It was intentional. The staffer was halfway back to the table, my gift box held like a problem he'd rather not solve. I followed slowly, not wanting to make a scene, but also not willing to pretend this wasn't exactly what it looked like. He placed the box on the far edge, tucked behind a stack of diaper packs and a mom-to-be tiara someone had already forgotten. I stood there for a beat, then walked away without saying a word. Somewhere between the cake table and the drink station, I spotted another tray being carried out. Stemless glasses filled with rose-colored punch, each one with a name tag tied to the stem. I wasn't thirsty, but something pulled me toward it anyway. I searched for mine, half expecting it to be missing altogether. And there it was. Ashley. Finally, I reached for the glass. A young server, barely older than 20, stepped in and grabbed it before I could. "Oh, I think that's for her," he said, gesturing to a woman chatting with Callista across the lawn. The woman turned. Blonde, perfectly tanned, with manicured nails that wrapped around the stem like it had been waiting for her. She took the glass, smiled sweetly. "Sorry," she said. "Ashley, with 2 E's. I looked at the server. "That's my name." He blinked. "Oh, I thought she was—" "Never mind." "Of course," I replied, forcing a smile, "because apparently 2 E's gets you a seat at the table." Ashley laughed like we were all in on the joke, but only one of us was the punchline. I grabbed another glass. No tag, no label. It tasted like strawberries and something artificial. Back near the welcome sign, a large board had been posted with the full guest list. A decorative display with gold calligraphy, floral trim, and rows of names printed in neat alphabetical order. I scanned the board. Nothing. Not under Harper. Not under Ashley. Instead, next to the catering staff's table, I spotted another list, printed in plain black font, clipped to a clipboard. Additional assistants, floaters, Ashley H. Not a guest, a helper, and even then, barely. I stared at it longer than necessary, like maybe if I looked hard enough, it would shift. Like maybe I'd misread it. But I hadn't. They needed me to show up, just not to be seen. They dressed exclusion in pastels and printed it on stationery. Later, while wandering near the buffet, I overheard Verlaine chatting with one of her tennis friends. "She's been distant for a while now," she said. "Not in a bad way, just different. You know how some people drift. Her voice was sweet, almost apologetic. I stepped back, letting her words hang in the air between the platters of cucumber sandwiches and mini quiches. Drift. That was how they framed it. Not pushed, not erased, just wandered off on my own. I made my way back toward the gift table, glancing one more time at the box I'd wrapped. It was still there, but still buried. No note read aloud, no thank you whispered over Callista's shoulder. Just a silver rectangle lost among the curated chaos. I checked my phone, out of habit more than anything, and there it was. A notification I had forgotten existed. Reminder, finalize logo file for Callista, draft due. I tapped the message, and it opened the project folder I'd built over a month ago. Inside were mock-ups, font selections, layout guides. The same color palette now draped across every inch of this event. The same pattern printed on napkins, balloons, signage. No credit, no mention, not even a text. I looked up and saw Callista laughing with Ashley, arms linked like lifelong sisters. The drinks sparkled in the light, the banner behind them dancing in the breeze. The very banner I designed, edited, and exported at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday while juggling deadlines. Not ignorance. Choreography. So carefully orchestrated that I almost believed I'd volunteered to be invisible. But now I knew better. I slipped my phone back into my purse and stood up straighter. They didn't forget me. They planned around me. I moved back through the crowd like I had somewhere to be. But really, I just needed to see it with my own eyes. Now that I knew what they were doing, I wanted to know how far they'd taken it. How many pieces of me they'd picked up and repurposed without hesitation. I passed the photo booth, where couples posed with oversized baby bottles and glittery tiaras, then paused at the side entrance to the ballroom. A breeze swept in from the patio, carrying laughter and the faint scent of sugared lemon from the punch table. Inside, the decor was flawless. Picture-perfect pastels, soft floral arrangements, gold-framed menus laid out like museum pieces. Every detail coordinated down to the candle wax. But when you've spent nights pulling mood boards and fighting with your laptop over font files, you recognize your own work. The napkin designs? Mine. The calligraphy on the signage? My templates? The color palette? Lifted straight from the project folder I'd shared with Callista weeks ago. At the time, I thought I was helping. That's what you do for family, right? You jump in when they're overwhelmed. You send mock-ups. You suggest vendors. You do the behind-the-scenes work so they can shine out front. But this wasn't gratitude. This was theft in slow motion. I pulled out my phone and opened the file folder labeled Project C. Every detail matched. The ribbon widths, the border spacing, the floral layout that was now draped across the welcome table in a delicate arch of peonies and baby's breath. The same one I'd drawn months ago on a napkin at brunch. I still had the picture of it. My sketch beside a latte cup and Callista's hand holding a mimosa. That sketch now towered behind her like a crown. And there she was, posing for a picture, framed in soft light, surrounded by compliments. "She's always had such vision," a woman near me said. "Callista's eye for detail is unmatched," someone else chimed in. I took a slow breath and looked away. Lyndon appeared beside me, barely touching my arm. "I wasn't going to say anything," she whispered, "but I saw that logo on her screen last week. She told someone it was from her designer in New York." I turned to face her. "That's funny," I said, calm, "because I still have the original Illustrator file, dated 6 months ago." Lyndon blinked, guilt flickering across her face. "I just thought you should know." "Ma, I already did." I stepped away before she could offer sympathy. I didn't need it. What I needed was clarity. And now I had it. I started taking pictures, quick snaps of the menus, the banners, the seating chart, all of it. Then I sent them to myself with side-by-side screenshots from my files. Time-stamped, organized, documented. "They didn't just forget me," I muttered as I typed the email subject line. "They wore me like a costume, then denied I ever touched it." the email sent with a soft swoosh. And then, as if the universe wanted to test me one last time, Verlaine stepped up to the microphone. The room hushed immediately. "I just want to thank everyone for coming," she began, voice warm and practiced. "This has been such a magical day, and it couldn't have happened without Callista's tireless planning. Every napkin, every ribbon, every font, she poured herself into it." Applause followed. Cameras clicked. Callista dabbed her eyes like someone had just accepted an Emmy. I didn't move. I didn't blink. Verlaine caught my gaze across the room. Held it. Didn't flinch. Didn't correct herself. Just let the lie settle in like it belonged there. Lie loud enough, I thought, and people will forget the truth. Unless someone speaks louder. I took out my phone again, opened the shared drive, scrolled to the folder labeled Project C. My finger hovered over the share button. All guests. But before I hit send, I wanted to see just how far they were willing to lie. I slipped the phone into my clutch before I could second-guess myself. One more lie, one more performance. I'd seen enough staged affection and curated betrayal for a lifetime. I needed to know if there was a line they wouldn't cross, or if the entire event had just been one long, slow march over mine. The moment found me faster than I expected. A small cluster had gathered near the gift table, voices hushed but animated. I moved closer, slow enough not to draw attention, just fast enough to hear. "That's odd," someone said. "Didn't she already get one just like that?" I glanced over. 2 identical baby blankets sat side by side. Same colors, same stitching, same border trim. Only one had a gold tag attached, elegantly printed. "From Lauren, Callista's college bestie." Except, I'd made that blanket. By hand. Every thread, every pattern. I knew the spacing of the embroidery, the exact shade of sage green I'd chosen for the border. I walked closer, reaching for the tag. Verlaine stepped in, too quickly. "Oh, we had a similar one made," she said lightly. "It's just coincidence." My fingers tugged gently at the tag. It peeled off without resistance. Underneath, faint glue residue clung to the fabric like shame. The original tag was gone, replaced, erased. Verlaine didn't flinch. "Why?" I asked, quietly but without tremble. She sighed, then finally turned to face me. "Because you don't belong in Callista's story anymore." It was said so plainly I almost didn't hear it right. "You made your choice when you moved away," she continued. "I have one daughter to worry about today. Don't ruin that for her." There it was. The sentence I had spent years hoping was never true, spoken as if it were just weather, no lightning, no thunder, just cold air settling in. Nearby, a few guests had heard. One leaned toward another and whispered, "Wasn't that Ashley's design too?" I didn't turn to see who said it. I didn't need confirmation. The room, once full of laughter and clinking glasses, felt brittle now. Callista noticed. She walked over, that too sweet smile stretched across her face, like wallpaper barely hiding cracked drywall. "Let's not start drama," she said through clenched teeth. "You said you weren't coming anyway. Be grateful you were even included." I looked her straight in the eyes. "I wasn't included. I was used. And now you're erasing me in real time, in front of people who used to know me." Verlaine stepped in again, eyes narrowed. "Stop playing the victim. It's unattractive." That did it. I pulled out my phone, tapped into the voice recorder, and hit play. Callista's voice filled the space between us. "I'm just gonna pass it off as mine. Who cares? It's not like Ashley's gonna show up." Silence. Not shocked silence, sick silence. A chair creaked, a fork dropped. One woman whispered, "She actually said that?" Verlaine's expression didn't change. Callista's did. Like someone had smudged her makeup with a truth she hadn't prepared for. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I tapped once more. "Share folder." The screen blinked. The email sent. To every guest on the RSVP list. Receipts, Timelines, sketches, screenshots. I turned and walked away without another word. My phone buzzed before I even reached the driveway. A group chat, the family one, still named Team Hathaway from when Dad was alive. Ashley, what is this? Then another message. I didn't know, I swear. The cracks were showing, and just like that, the room I never belonged to started folding from within. The last message from the group chat still lingered on my screen as I stepped back toward the patio. A flicker of movement drew my eyes to the guests. Some had phones out. Others had faces tight with forced smiles. The noise level had dropped. The once constant hum of praise, party games, and curated delight had quieted into something much more awkward. And just like that, the room began to change. I watched as fingers scrolled through the folder I'd just shared. Receipts, design files, side-by-side screenshots. Proof. All of it now sitting on the same devices where they'd once liked Callista's curated posts. Near the dessert table, a woman I barely knew stopped mid-bite, eyebrows raised, as she turned her screen to the person beside her. Another guest near the balloon arch slowly lowered her glass and whispered something that made the man next to her glance across the lawn with a frown. The hush spread like a ripple. Callista's laugh, brittle and too bright, snapped through it. "This is a personal event," she said, louder than necessary. "You have no right to turn it into some public drama." Verlaine materialized behind her, face tight, but voice deceptively calm. "You've always had a problem with being second, Ashley, and now you're punishing us for it." I didn't respond right away. Instead, I scrolled again on my phone, opened the PDF that had been sitting in my files for 3 years. I'd kept it out of loyalty, then out of habit. Now it was time. I turned the screen toward them both. "This house," I said, steady, "it was willed to me, by Dad." Verlaine's posture stiffened. "I only signed it over because you said it was for tax purposes, temporary, because we're family." Callista let out a short, sarcastic laugh. "Are you seriously bringing that up right now?" A guest near the window stepped back. Another cleared her throat awkwardly. "This house," I repeated, slower now, "is mine. Or was. Until you repainted over every wall, replaced every photo, and threw my name in the trash." Verlaine opened her mouth, then closed it. Someone behind her whispered, "Is that true?" I saw Mrs. Darnell, Dad's old secretary, blink twice and turn to her husband. "But I thought Ashley designed all this." Pieces were shifting, the glossy illusion cracking. "I thought you said she wasn't involved in planning," someone else added, voice sharper. And just like that, the thread began to unravel. I didn't need to fan the fire. I simply stepped forward, into the center of the lawn, where all the speeches had happened earlier, where the floral arch still loomed like a crown over a throne no one had earned. "You wanted me to stay quiet," I said, voice low but clear. "To keep the picture pretty, to keep your secret safe, but I'm not your mistake to hide." I looked at Callista, then Verlaine. Neither spoke. "Enjoy the party," I added. "You planned every detail, just not this ending." A few guests began quietly gathering their things. Napkins folded. Shoes slipped back on. The playlist still played, but the energy had vanished. Even the cake on the corner table looked out of place now. Too polished, too perfect, too staged. Callista leaned toward Verlaine, whispering furiously. I couldn't hear the words, but I didn't need to. Verlaine didn't move. Her face was frozen. Not angry, just still. The camera crew, yes, there was one, hesitated before turning away from the scene. Even they weren't sure whether to keep rolling. I turned away, finally ready to leave for real. My phone buzzed again. A new message. "Ashley, please tell me this isn't what it looks like." Another. I didn't know. I really didn't. I paused on the pathway, just long enough to look back at the house. The house I grew up in. The house that once smelled like Dad's cologne and Sunday roast chicken. The house I was told would always be mine, even when it no longer felt like it. And for the first time, it wasn't me who looked like the outsider. It was them. I stepped back through the side entrance as the wind shifted, carrying with it the faint scent of lavender from the centerpieces and something else, something sharper. Not tension exactly, not regret, but the raw metallic scent of truth finely bleeding through silk. The room wasn't quiet, but it wasn't loud either. It pulsed with the kind of static energy that lives in held breaths and unspoken questions. Guests stood in fractured groups, scrolling, whispering, darting glances toward Callista, toward Verlaine, toward me. Verlaine paced the hallway like she was solving a crisis, hand clasped around her phone like a weapon, her smile brittle and blunted. Callista had vanished. Someone mentioned she was locked in the guest bathroom, blaming pregnancy nerves. Whatever she told them, it didn't matter anymore. The magic spell had cracked. I walked slowly through the living room, not hiding, not rushing. Alone, but not hiding. For the first time, the center of the house didn't feel like enemy territory. It felt like evidence. And still, there was one thing left to see. As I made my way toward the front door, I passed the old mirror near the entryway. The one I used to stop at before school dances. The one where I tried on graduation caps and debated lipstick shades before my first interview. Now, a note was taped across it. Cheap printer paper, block letters. Staff only, do not use for guests. Of course. Even the reflections had been assigned categories now. Even the mirror knows I'm not welcome, I murmured. I almost laughed. Almost. Voices drifted in from the parlor. Let's just get one group shot, Verlaine was saying, to salvage the day. I didn't move. From my vantage point, I saw the flurry. Callista had re-emerged, face retouched, composure reassembled. A small crowd formed around her. Her husband stepped beside her, arm firm around her waist. Someone handed Verlaine a floral bouquet, which she accepted like it was a consolation prize for lost control. A cousin, David, looked around. Wait, shouldn't Ashley be in it? He asked. Verlaine didn't miss a beat. Let's keep it tight, she said. Just immediate family. That sentence. So calm, so clipped. I stepped into view then, emerging from the hallway like a memory they hadn't finished erasing. No worries, I said quietly. I already know where I stand. A few people turned. A few flinched. But I didn't wait for a reaction. I just walked to the coat rack, pulled my light jacket from the hook, and buttoned it slowly. My phone buzzed again. Lyndon. Her message was simple. For what it's worth, some of us always saw you. I read it twice, then smiled. Not out of joy, not vindication. Just the relief of knowing I hadn't imagined the erasure. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing. No one tried to stop me. Not this time. I reached the door, turned the handle, stepped outside. The wind had picked up, brushing strands of hair across my face. I didn't fix them. I didn't look back. When they lose you slowly, I thought, they don't even notice you're gone, until the silence becomes permanent. Halfway down the path, I paused and took out my phone. For no reason, or maybe to make a moment feel more like mine. The gallery app opened to the latest photos from today. I tapped the notification bar that had appeared. Tag yourself? You weren't detected in this memory. I stared at it for a long time, then closed the screen and kept walking. But I was never meant to stay in a picture they framed without me. I made it halfway to the car before my feet slowed. The keys were in my hand. The engine just a few steps away. But something inside me pressed pause. Not hesitation, not doubt. It was something colder, something sharper. Regret had no place here, but justice? That still had breath in it. I turned around. The lights from the house were soft, golden, almost forgiving. Music trickled through the open patio doors, something acoustic now, probably meant to soothe whatever storm had swept through. A part of me almost laughed. I walked back in. Not to fix anything, not to plead, just to finish it. The guests hadn't left yet. Some stood in clusters, low voices, and side glances. Others acted like nothing had happened, pretending to admire the dessert table, or Callista's maternity sash, or the overpriced flower wall they all suddenly stopped posing in front of. Callista stood near the gift table, surrounded by the usual orbit. People too polite or too complicit to say what they'd read in the folder I'd shared. I walked past them without a word, eyes forward. My steps deliberate. In the far corner of the lawn, where the trash bin stood tucked behind a privacy screen, I spotted it. The folding chair. Still there. Still stained at the edges, still scuffed on one leg, still humming with the insult it was born to carry. I picked it up, carried it back through the crowd. Voices trailed off. Conversations stalled. I passed the family photo backdrop, where earlier Callista had posed like a goddess, a halo of florals behind her, and the words "Celebrating Baby B" above her head in gold. That was where I placed the chair. Dead center. I didn't say anything. I reached into my bag, pulled out a Sharpie, and scribbled on a blank place card I'd taken earlier from the table. I taped it to the back of the chair. "This is where you left me," someone gasped. A glass clinked onto a table, too hard. Callista's heels clicked across the patio as she approached, her smile forced so tight it cracked at the corners. "What are you trying to prove?" she hissed. I tilted my head. "I'm not proving anything," I said evenly. "Just correcting the guest list." She glanced around, lowering her voice. "If you cared that much, you wouldn't have left in the first place." I met her stare. "If you cared that much," I said, calm as a church bell, "I wouldn't have needed to." Behind her, someone tried to distract the guests with a new round of drinks. It didn't work. People were watching now. Really watching. I turned to go, and that's when a valet stepped forward. Awkward, a little too nervous. "Ms. Hathaway? Your keys were just found. They'd been set aside by mistake." I didn't blink. He handed them over. Another staff member leaned in, not realizing how loud her whisper was. "We were told to hold guests back, if they tried to leave too early." I looked right at her. "So you built the perfect party and tried to trap me in it." She flushed. I walked back to the chair, stood next to it one last time. "This was never about being included," I said to no one and everyone. "It was about control." I looked at the crowd. "So here's my RSVP." I paused. "No, thank you." I turned. No one followed. No one called my name. I walked out through the gate. The breeze was stronger now, dusk folding over the backyard like an honest curtain. Just as I reached the sidewalk, a baby shower balloon that had escaped its tether floated past. Its ribbon brushed against my wrist. I didn't grab it. I let it drift. Up. Away. Sometimes healing starts when you stop waiting for someone else to notice the wound. By the time I pulled into the gravel lot behind my building in Austin, the last shades of daylight had slipped below the skyline. I parked in my usual spot, turned off the engine, and sat in the quiet hum of cooling metal. The phone buzzed again. One message, then another. Missed call from Mom. Unopened text from Callista. I tapped once, half out of instinct. "You ruined something beautiful," she'd written. Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "Let's talk." Just that. I stared at the screen for a full breath. Then tapped delete. No reply. No point. Inside my apartment, I didn't turn on the overhead light. I moved through the dim warmth of home by memory, dropping my shoes by the entry bench, hanging my purse on the hook. My fingers skimmed the edge of the kitchen counter, like I needed proof that this space was still mine. I opened the group chat archive, the one still labeled Team Hathaway, with a photo of all of us from years ago, back when Dad was still alive, still the glue. The thread had exploded earlier in the evening, and now it buzzed with a different kind of energy. Photos from the shower, guests still posting, smiling, pretending. There was no mention of what had unfolded. Not a single caption acknowledged the fracture. Just snapshots, group hugs, cake, candles, the kind of content people scroll past and assume everything's fine. I clicked the link to the digital guestbook. A browser tab loaded slowly. Then, "This form is no longer accepting submissions." I blinked at the screen. My own message, drafted that morning before everything had unraveled, sat unsent in my notes app. Maybe I was too late. Or maybe they never intended to let me write in it anyway. I closed the browser. That weekend, I took myself to a small cafe 2 blocks from my place. I sat on the patio with my laptop, trying to do a little freelance catch-up. I was wearing a loose tee, hair pulled back, no makeup. Just me, unpolished and quietly whole. A woman approached as I sipped from a chipped ceramic mug. "Excuse me," she said with a cautious smile. "Were you one of the assistants from that shower in Plano last week?" I looked at her for a moment. She was friendly, curious. Probably didn't mean anything by it. "No," I said, calm. "But I did design every detail you loved." Her eyes widened slightly, mouth parting like she might apologize or explain. I gave her a nod before she had to. That moment used to sting. Now, it felt like freedom. When I got home later that afternoon, I pulled down an old box from my bookshelf. It held pieces of me no one else had asked for. Drawings from elementary school, letters from Dad, a faded flyer from the high school play I designed sets for. One photo caught my eye. Me and Dad, sitting on the porch steps, lemonade in hand. His arm around my shoulder, his smile easy. They didn't take me out of the story, I thought. They just stopped telling the truth. I found a new frame in the drawer, brushed dust off the glass, slipped the photo in. I placed it on the entry table, alone, not lonely. Later that evening, the sun low and soft through the blinds, I watered my plants in silence. They leaned toward the light without apology, voice steady in my head. I always thought healing would come from being welcomed back in. The soil absorbed the water. The air smelled like basil and citrus. "Turns out," I whispered, "it comes from walking out and not looking over your shoulder." I curled onto the couch with a blanket, letting the stillness stretch. The phone lit up on the armrest. One new notification. "Verlaine has sent you a friend request." I stared at it. No reaction, no decision, just silence. I let the friend request sit. Didn't open it, didn't delete it, didn't need to. It could live there, unread. A little gray bubble of digital apology. That small red notification dot used to mean something. Attention, affection, a gesture. Now it just meant that Verlaine wanted access again. Not understanding, not accountability. Access. And I no longer owed her anything. I set the phone down on the coffee table and leaned back. My apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet that didn't demand anything from me. No judgment, no false promises of reconciliation, just space. Later that afternoon, while sorting through a storage closet I hadn't touched in months, I found it. A cardboard box, edges soft from years of handling. On the side, in Dad's handwriting, was a faded label. Dad's desk. Inside, old court documents, worn-out pens, yellowed post-its with his impossible handwriting. I dug through carefully, letting my fingers remember the texture of his world. At the bottom, beneath a stack of notebooks, I found it. A small handheld voice recorder. Black. Dusty. I pressed play, expecting a click or nothing at all. Instead, it whirred to life, and his voice filled the room. "Ash. I know this family doesn't always say it out loud, but I see you. I always have. Don't ever let anyone edit your worth." I sat down. Not because my knees gave out, but because there was nowhere else to be in that moment except still. He'd recorded it a month before his death. Maybe he knew what was coming. Maybe he knew what they'd try to take from me. But not this. Not this part. My breath caught, not from sadness, but from recognition. I hadn't imagined him being different. He was. While the rest of the world tried to erase, he had tried to imprint. Online, the email I'd sent had taken a quiet life of its own. I didn't track every comment, didn't respond to messages. But I saw the shift. Callista's brand deals suddenly postponed, PR photos quietly archived. The inspirational mom quote posts on her feed were now met with skeptical comments. Verlaine tried to post something neutral, a generic image of sunflowers overlaid with "family means sticking together." It didn't land. She was gently, politely ratioed. A few people reposted my screenshots. One added, "Tell the whole truth or none at all." I didn't engage, didn't explain. They'd already told on themselves. That week, I launched a new version of my website. New name, new logo, clean lines, simple, honest. The tagline read, "You don't have to be invited to take up space." The photo on the homepage was just my hands at work. No face, no performance. Just doing what I do best, creating. They made my name invisible. I made it unforgettable. Sunday rolled around soft and warm. I took myself to the market, wore jeans and an old t-shirt, hair tucked under a ball cap. No armor, just me. I wandered past the fresh produce, the bread stall, the flower vendor, who always slipped me an extra stem. Then I passed a booth selling hand-lettered quotes in wooden frames. One caught my eye. "Forgiveness is freedom, but so is not needing it." I smiled. Didn't stop, just kept walking. Because that was the thing they never understood. Sometimes the biggest revenge isn't fire. It's peace. It's not begging to be let back in. It's building something no one can shut you out of. To anyone who's ever been seated by the trash, you are not the waste. You are the one they feared would outshine the centerpieces.